Hello folks, Dick Fairburn here. Last week I talked about lever action carbines as home defense weapons. I think they're perfectly adequate, 10 rounds in the tube. You got a heck of a fighting rifle. But what about M4s? If you want to take that step up, if you have one available to set up for home defense, I'll show you how I set mine up, and I think it's a good simple way to be prepared with these kind of rifles. Stick around. Hello folks, Dick Fairburn here again. Last week I posted a video on how about using a lever action carbine as a home defense weapon. And so far it's my #1 video on the beginnings of this young channel. So I thought I'd take the next step, and I'm going to celebrate a little bit of a legal victory this week. Last week we were under an oppressive assault rifle ban and high capacity magazine ban in Illinois. Last Friday afternoon, a federal judge issued an injunction freezing that from being enforced. Now, this is just the beginning of a long legal process. But now I can go to the range with 30-round magazines. Actually, I always could. They exempted retired law enforcement, security, corrections folks from the law, so we could have the high-capacity magazines and assault rifle bans. And the ban was just on the sale of them, not the possession. So. As we all know, they ultimately want to ban all guns from all people except themselves. So this is just a first step. But I think with the way we've seen the Supreme Court rule since the Bruin decision and some others, I think all of these assault weapon bans are going to fall dramatically across the country. It is patently unconstitutional, and I will celebrate this week by having a 30-round magazine in my M4. So this week I want to talk about how about an AR-15, or in the modern designation, an M4, as a home defense weapon. If you have one, if you want to go buy one, the prices on these are down. There are some bargain basement prices out there right now on AR-15s around the country. I will tell you that you get what you pay for. There are a number of top-end weapons out there. There are a number of kind of unknown names. At one point, a magazine editor asked me, should we do an article on which companies are making AR-15s, and I said, well, it would be a lot less work to write an article about which ones weren't making AR-15s, because almost everybody is nowadays. I told you before, I'm kind of old-fashioned. When I started out, if you wanted a .45 auto pistol, it was a Colt government model. We really didn't call them 1911s back then. That's a later designation we picked up. If you wanted an AR-15, it had to be a Colt. If you wanted a .45, it had to be a Colt. Nowadays, Colt is almost one of the last manufacturers you think of. And part of the reason for that is that Colt has been bogged down since 2001 in making military weapons that they haven't had much production that they could release to law enforcement or general civilian population. But you're seeing some Colts start to show up out there. Colt has had a long and storied history. It's had ups and downs in terms of quality. But no one, add them all together, I don't think hardly anyone has made more M4s, AR-15s, M16s than Colt, and they know how to do it well. A number of years ago, a Colt rep asked me to review some Colt products for Police One magazine, or a website when I was working for them. And the first thing they sent me was this. This is an M4. It's called their Advanced Law Enforcement Carbine. I believe the model number 6940. The upper receiver and all these four ends are all milled as one solid piece, so there's no way it can come loose. When I test a new AR-15, anything in .223 caliber or .556 caliber, for years I have used a load that my friend Jeff Hoffman at Black Hills Ammunition makes. He has a 52 grain match hollow point load, which is an excellent varmint bullet. It's not really good for anti-personnel work, but it is consistently the most accurate load I've ever used in any .223 or .556 rifle I've tested it in. So when I took this to the range, I had a 4-power scope I mounted on there just for range day. I ran a patch down the bore to get rid of any excess oil, and I loaded up 3 of those 52 match hollow points. And the first 3 round group I could cover with a nickel, just slightly over a ½ inch center to center. And I made a note on my notebook, call Colt, they're not getting this one back, I'm going to buy it. I have owned or used more Colts than I can remember that would all shoot minute of angle or better right out of the box. These things shoot like sniper rifles a lot of times, and a lot of other brands do as well. But if you get a chance to get a Colt, you're never going to go wrong. They're great weapons. So I want to show you the way I set up my M4. Until a couple of years ago, this was in the trunk of my car as I worked as a public safety director here in my community. I was the police chief and the fire chief. And at the time, I loaded it with 62 grain Barnes hollow point ammunition. There's a couple different sources where you can get that. Probably the best all-around 5.56 load you can get. There are some bonded bullets that will do as good. So that was my duty load if I needed it. And I had 3 30-round magazines, 2 in a tactical vest, 1 in the weapon, ready to grab and go. I had it out a couple times, never came close to needing to use it in that job. But I helped start the patrol rifle movement. In 1985, when I went to work for a sheriff's department in Wyoming, we racked rifles in our cars. And I had, the year before, 1984, I had written an article saying that I think law enforcement is not well served with a shotgun as the long gun. I think we're better off with an AR-15. So I've had these as patrol rifles for a very long time. Now, the 62s have gone back. If I ever want to use it as a hunting rifle, most states require a 60 grain bullet or heavier to shoot deer, antelope, something of that size. So those 62s are on store for that. What I load it with now is what I think is absolutely the best anti-personnel round available. If you think I'm pitching for Black Hills Ammunition, they are not paying me to do this. It's just that over the years I've used a lot of ammunition. I've gotten to know Jeff and Christy at Black Hills very well, and their stuff is, I think, the best out there. But they load a 50 grain Barnes all copper hollow point, Barnes TSX. And their newest boxes, they mark it as optimized. The 50 grain Barnes hollow point is really a varmint bullet. It's made to blow up on light targets. Jeff had Barnes modify this 50 grain into a much tougher hollow point design. And its only purpose was as a police patrol rifle, as an anti-personnel cartridge. It's tougher so that it will go through the 8-part barrier test for ammunition that the FBI protocol uses. It goes through car glass, it goes through body metal of a vehicle, it goes through sheetrock, heavy clothing, there's 8 intermediate barriers that they test it through. This 50 is essentially barrier blind. It will give the same terminal performance whether or not it has gone through that barrier. And the terminal performance is nothing short of outstanding. It's meeting the 12-inch FBI minimum. A lot of times in the bare gelatin it's going to 14 inches, which is a bonus. It's accurate, and it will give you this performance out to about 200 yards. It also gives you this performance from almost any barrel length, from 20 down to 8 for some of the pistol cartridges. So it's just a really unique load. It's very expensive. I think a box like this, I looked on the internet before I came out here, and you're going to pay about 85 bucks or more for a 50-round box. But you don't need much more than a 50-round box to load up a magazine or 2 with this stuff and then back it up with 55 grain full metal jackets. Use the full metal jackets for your training. And I'm going to do another video later on. I will show you that the full metal jackets in U.S. military ammo, either the 55 grain or 62 grain, the green tip, both can give pretty good terminal performance out to about 100 to 150 yards. Now Jeff tells people not to use this past 200 yards because the bullet is so tough that once it has slowed down to that lower velocity, it's not going to open up, it's not going to perform like it should. So to me, this is the ultimate home defense weapon. My lever action suits me just fine, holds 10 rounds, and I think that's enough. But as I said, honoring the judge's ruling last Friday, I've got a 30-round magazine in here. This is not high capacity, this is standard capacity for this weapon when it's issued out to law enforcement, military, or anyone else. The 20-round magazine, the straight 20s, is what this rifle originally used. And I have a bunch of these, and I like to use them, especially if I'm sighting in off of a bench, The 30 can bang into things depending on how you're using it. So a 20 is a lot handier. It's more than enough rounds to do almost any job. But legally, up until last Friday, all you could have in Illinois was a 10-round magazine. So when that law went into effect, I ordered a few 10-round PMags, and I think once we ultimately win this case, I think we should all band together in a class action suit and sue the Illinois government to recoup the money we spent on 10-round magazines that we didn't really need. But then I think these politicians should be punished for ruling in what they know very well is an unconstitutional way. All right, how do I set up my M4? I think first of all, you need backup iron sights. If your optics go out on you, you need to get them off with a quick detachable mount. You need to pop up those irons, so they need to be sighted. I will normally mount a 1X optical red dot sight. I like the Aimpoint Micro that I have here. There was a photo of this rifle in one of my articles in Concealed Carry magazine, and a couple of readers sent it in and said, "Gee, why is your optic mounted out so far?" And I said, it's out there so far because it can be on this rifle. The rails go all the way out to the front sight. This was a lesson I learned from John Farnham. John is a generation or two back master trainer in the United States. If you've never heard of him, look him up. If you ever get the chance to go to one of his classes at Defense Tactics International, look up John. And he invited me over to a carbine class a few years ago. I showed up, I had my Micro mounted back here, and before we started the class he said, "Why do you put it there?" And I'm used to putting optics back where optics go, where you're going to have the right eye relief. But these optics, Aimpoints, EOTechs, any of these zero magnification red reticles, they have no eye relief. You can put them anywhere you want. And so he had me shoulder the rifle, and he put his fist there and he said, "Now, what kind of field of view do you have? What does that do to your situational awareness?" And it blocks it. And a lot of the optics that are on police rifles are this big. You know, we set up a dozen AR-15s before I left the police department here, and we put the Aimpoint Pro on there. It's a lot bigger sight, but it's a lot less money. But they're rather large. And he said, if you have no eye relief problem, what happens if I move it out here? And when he moved his hand out there, it's like, holy cow, I got a much bigger field of view. There's a lot out there in front of me that I could see out there that I couldn't see from back here. So that's why I put the optics out as far as I can. Some rifles you can only put them out to the end of the receiver, but if you have an extended rail and you can get them further out, it's just a situational awareness situation. Your red dot is going to be just as effective out there for you, so consider mounting it out there if you can. Optics, I think, are the way to go. A lot of carbines will still have the fixed front sight, and the optics, some align with it, some are in the lower third. The sight in the way bothers me a lot. So I go with a carbine where I can fold those sights out of the way. All I have is the red dot. If there's a problem, this is on a LaRue mount. I can snap this off very quickly. I can put it right back on. It goes right to 0 with that quick detach feature. Get that out of the way, pop up my irons, and I'm still in the fight. You need some sort of flashlight. This happens to be a Streamlight TLR1. This is one of the first ones on the market. It's not the brightest of lights, but it gives more than enough for what we're doing, especially on an indoor environment. Some have a separate switch where you can mount it and then hit it with your thumb or fingers as you like. This has a rocker switch, so I can go with a momentary or solid on. And I've got it positioned so that my support hand is going to operate that very easily. I like a sling, even for a home defense situation. There are 1-point slings that both ends of the sling mount back here. There's a 2-point sling. I think the 2-point sling is easier for me to get used to. It's what I recommend when I trained cops. You put it on, you snug it up, and now if I need to, I can just drop the gun, let it hang. It's pointed in a safe direction. I can go to a sidearm, whatever else I need to do. That way I can go hands-free. If you do not have a sling, the only thing you can do is put a rifle down. And if you're inside of your house, maybe you've engaged one bad guy, you think it's over, but you're not sure, you're going to search one more area, real tight area perhaps, where you have to use a handgun. If you set that down and the bad guy's still mobile, or there's another one, you've just given them a pretty powerful weapon to use against you. So I like to have that where I can drop it, go hands-free on the rifle, but my hands are available to deal with people, to secure people, to go for a sidearm, whatever we need to do. Now, who can tell me how many other hundreds or thousands of things that you can screw on to a Picatinny rail or an M-lock with an AR-15? The list is endless. The only thing else that I leave on this rifle, this is a Arca Swiss mount, because I also use this rifle for nighttime coyote hunting. And that way I can clamp that on a heavy-duty tripod and go hands-free when I'm out there calling coyotes or varmint hunting like that. That mount's on there. It's not in the way at all. It's the only other accessory I put on there. The more stuff you put on there, the more stuff you have to break or to get in the way. Clint Smith is the honcho at Thunder Ranch, and he told me one time, he said when people show up for his carbine class, he said usually by the end of day one, certainly by the end of day two, most of the stuff they've got screwed onto it is back in the trunk of their car, because it either got in the way, came loose, broke, or some other thing. You need a reliable rifle, you need a good magazine, optics if you choose to use them, and I think that's the way to go nowadays, and a light source. Simple, easy to learn, very reliable way to go. The 50 grain Black Hills ammunition, I think, is the primo self-defense cartridge that's out there right now. Realistically, if you shoot anything in the 50 to 60 grain range with a hollow point or a soft point, it's not going to meet the FBI standards. A lot of those things will only penetrate 8, 9, maybe 10 inches deep. But realistically, engaging someone in your home or near your home, that's probably going to be enough. There are a lot of police agencies that shoot that kind of ammunition on the street simply because it's cheap. It's the state bid. You know, we deal with low price bid, yet it gives pretty good reliable performance out on the street. Very rarely does someone take a torso hit with one of those 50 to 60 grain soft point, hollow point bullets and not go down. 5.56 is, in my opinion, not a good battle rifle. I think perhaps the Army's going a good direction by moving back up to a larger caliber. But for home defense, for police use, I think the 5.56 with the modern ammunition choices we have is almost ideal. So there's another option for you. If you like the lever action, it'll do the job perfectly well. If you've got an AR or you want an AR, then by all means get it. Some people say, what about a 300 blackout cartridge in lieu of the 5.56? It's your choice. What you're looking at with a black is something along the line of a 7.62 by 39 power level. If you put a 125 grain bullet in that, you're going to get a very similar velocity to what the AK delivers. That's generally going to give you more penetration. In a home environment, we generally want a little bit less penetration. But if you have a good 300 blackout, you want to use that for home defense, you're well armed. Some people ask, what about AR pistols? They're even smaller and more compact. That's true. Again, recently we had a win. There's a federal court that has put a stay on the arm brace rule from the ATF. I think eventually that will fall. This is my opinion only. I don't have a lot of experience with those pistols because when I have used them, I thought they were ungainly and just not very effective. Once the arm brace idea came about, if you can use that against your shoulder as a short stock, then those AR pistols are phenomenal close quarter fighting rifles. And if you pick the right load, like the Barnes 50X from Black Hills or something like that, it's going to give pretty good performance even in a very short barrel. The downside to them is excessive noise and excessive muzzle flash. There's a chance you're going to really knock out your night vision if you light off a couple of those in an indoor environment. And the noise indoors is punishing. When I use those in training, even in an open top shoot house on a police range, I would wear plugs and muffs because of the concussion of those very short barrels. But if you want an AR pistol, and perhaps we win and you can still keep those braces on there and use them as a short stock, they're very, very handy to use in a close situation. In fact, that's really what most of our special operator military types out there are using now, are a short stock to not interfere with their plate armor, a short barrel, but they've almost invariably got a sound suppressor on there. And that's going to make all the difference. That quiets down that massive blast. It's going to hold most of that flash in and makes it a very viable weapon. So there you go. A lot of AR options you can use out there for home defense. The choice is yours. If you like what you're seeing on these things, I ask you to subscribe, give me a like, thumbs up, and I appreciate everybody watching these videos. So stay safe out there. Thank you.
Okay, we got them both here now. You ready? Bud got one. Ginger got one. Oh, she missed it. She usually gets them, doesn't she, Bud? Okay, girl, last one. You ready? You ready? Yeah! That's all there is till next time.